It's time for TPG Live. Today, the on-camera portion of our roundtable is joined by Mark Lucido. With over 17 years of senior product management experience, he's worked at such renowned institutions as IBM, Change Healthcare, and Cognizant, where we met. And he's now a product management leader at healthcare solution provider Optum. Laura Stringer. Previously, she could be found at Ingersoll Rand, Coldwell Banker, and Merck & Co. She's a graduate of my alma mater, Carnegie Mellon University, and possesses a strong penchant for singing and karaoke. Laura is now founder and principal consultant at Ninth Fourth, where she advises B2B SaaS companies on growth and strategy. Raheel Ishtiaq, a wearer of many hats from software developer to project manager and now product management leader. Raheel previously could be found at such companies as BankJoy, NCR Corporation, Comcast, NBC Universal, and AIA Contract Documents. He has an extensive track record in enterprise product development and team management. And then there's me, Jeremy Horn, the product guy. We'll be talking about product-led strategies versus real-world realities and identifying and overcoming obstacles to becoming a product manager. Is product-led growth a sustainable model or just a bubble waiting to burst? Is product-driven growth really possible in enterprise B2B? In an oversaturated job market, can you, a product manager, stand out? All this and much more coming up next on TPG Live. Your go-to platform for all things product management, connecting you with industry leaders, trendsetters, and a global community of insights and unique perspectives. This is the Product Way. This show is brought to you by The Product Mentor, a free program that's making a meaningful difference in the world of product management. With a footprint in over 20 countries, The Product Mentor is where mentors come from esteemed companies you know and trust, like Google, American Express, Etsy, Oracle, and many more. Head over to theproductmentor.com to learn more. As the Product Mentor looks to the future, the first half of 2024 is shaping up to be a very exciting time. A new session and website are on the horizon, and they're actively seeking mentors. If you've ever considered contributing to the community, now is the perfect time. So why wait? Visit theproductmentor.com today to learn more and sign up. It's an opportunity to make a real impact, both on your career and the broader product management community. Don't let this chance pass you by. This show is brought to you by The Product Group. The Product Group isn't just another meetup. It's a thriving community that's been the go-to hub for product enthusiasts since 2009. The Experience. You're sitting in a close-knit roundtable setting, either in person or virtually via TPG Live on YouTube. The conversation starts, and you're suddenly part of a dynamic dialogue that's as electrifying as it is enlightening. Who's this meetup for? Whether you're a product manager in a startup, a designer in a Fortune 500, a seasoned chief officer, or a student aspiring to break into the industry, the Product Group has a seat for you at the roundtable. It's a diverse community where you'll find a blend of fresh perspectives and seasoned wisdom, covering everything from the latest industry trends to timeless best practices. If you're ready to elevate your game and enrich your network, head over to meetup.com/pro/theproductgroup and join a chapter near you today. And if you're feeling adventurous, why not start a chapter in your own city? Just shoot an email to Jeremy Horn, aka The Product Guy, at jhorn, that is JHORN, at theproductguy.com. Are you looking to elevate your brand in the product management space? Partner with The Product Way, the go-to product management channel featuring a variety of shows like TPG Live. With a dedicated and diverse audience of product professionals, from newcomers to C-level execs, your brand will be front and center in conversations that matter. We offer exclusive sponsorship packages that put your message in the spotlight. Don't miss this chance to elevate your brand while contributing to the community. Email us at jhorn, that is JHORN, at theproductguy.com. Hello, product people. Are you ready to be part of the conversation that's shaping the world of product management? This is TPG Live, and I'm Jeremy Horn, also known as the Product Guy, and we are about to begin. This is your stage, no matter where you are in your product journey, from startups to Fortune 500s, interns to CEOs. We're a global community that values every voice, and that's what sets us apart. TPG Live is more than a show. It's a conversation shaped by you, whether you're on camera or off. Your insights, questions, and topics are what make this roundtable truly global and inclusive. TPG Live is not just another product management program. It's a community dialogue that spans the globe. So get ready to engage and amplify your impact. Let's meet the roundtable.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you all for joining us tonight or today, wherever you might be in the world. We've got a really great panel here for you, as I've just mentioned at the outset. And I'm just very happy, very excited. We've got some really great topics that we're going to be talking about. As I like to always start, though, I like to start with a good question of the night. But also, I would like to remind everyone: post your questions, your thoughts, your comments, what have you, to your chat room or your comment section, or whatever, however you are consuming and viewing this. If you've got questions, we'll work them into the conversation. Got points of view, we'll definitely try to call out as much of that as possible, and I'll do my best to keep it moving around the room as we go. With that said, I want to dive into the question of the night. And for those of you off camera, please also share your responses to the question of the night that we've got here. It's a pretty, I'd say, pretty fun one that we've got. As I'd like to start out with, it's put quite simply: if you could have a superpower in product management, what would it be? What would that superpower product management skill be? And also, what would your superhero name be? So with that said, let's start out with Laura. Laura, tell us about your superpower.
You know, I think my superhero name would have to be Time Stop. And the power is pretty self-explanatory. I need to stop time, just get everything caught up, get everything launched, get everything out the door, and then we can start time again, and everything's fine.
Maybe Captain Time Stop?
Captain Time Stop. It's done.
Awesome. Raheel.
I went with the Captain theme. I said Captain Insightful. The power to predict customer usage and roadblocks to product adoption. So if I could figure out what will cause customers to potentially not use the product I'm building, or how will they be using it to better it in the future and get more adoption and, of course, revenue, that would be Captain Insightful's role.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Mark.
I went with the time theme, but mine was really focused on the ability to see the future and to read minds. That way you could predict what trends are occurring, and where customers are wanting to see your product move into the future. For my superhero name, it would have to be Futuro.
Ooh,
Futuro. Okay. All right. I gotcha. Sounds good to me. I would say for myself, let's see. What would it be? I guess I should have put more thought into it. What mine could be. But I think what I would go with, my superhero power would be instant POV. I'd say instant user perspective shifting. The ability to instantly experience and understand a product from any user's viewpoint. That way I can ensure always being comprehensive and empathetic in the way I approach product development. And I think it's similar in the theme that you just mentioned there, Mark. I would think I would go with Perspecto would be my superhero name. So I think that might be a good. I like that for a superhero. I like that for the a good superhero name there. What's everyone else? Let's see if we've got any other folks from the crowd. Let's see. Any superheroes? POV-omatic, says Steve Klassen. All right. John Park says the ability to split myself to be in multiple places at once. He'd be called multi-dude. All right. All right. What was that?
I said multiple meetings at once.
Or maybe I look at it from the other perspective of, can we just make all the meetings disappear?
You might be stretching the bounds of reality there.
Right. We've got the deal maker from Aksat Udape. Any others? Going once, going twice. All right. So now that we all we can look back at the day that we didn't have the superhero powers, and go, all right, I guess we'll be mere mortal product managers. And with that said, we'll dive into our first topic of our first topic of the night, which is about product-led strategies and real-world realities. Basically, what I want to talk about here is when people talk about product-led companies and exploring the tangible impact, talking about the tangible impact and the challenges, the positives, the negatives, the shortcomings of maybe product-led growth strategies. That's when I think there's a lot of room for debate, a lot of opportunity for improvement as well. So I want to just start with, since we're talking about product-led growth, I wanted to pose a question, not just to this roundtable, but to the folks who are joining us in the chat rooms around the world. I'd like everyone to think about a story where they attempted product-led growth approach, a product-led approach, where they stumbled. What went wrong? How did they address it? And I'd also say, if you haven't figured out how to address it, talk about where you're stuck. And we'll come back to that in a little bit after we've gone around the roundtable for a little bit. But I figured this would be something that people can think about, share as everyone's talking, as well as pose other questions, etc., as we're going. But to just start out, let's just kind of set the stage and make sure we're all pointed in the same direction, and talk about product-led growth. What is it? So who could kind of jump in there and kind of help point us in the right direction for product-led growth? What is it? Laura, you want to take this one?
Sure. So product-led growth is actually exactly what it sounds like. It is, it's a model in which you are relying primarily on the product to grow the business rather than sales or marketing or anything else. So it is truly product-led. It is typically when you're seeing subscription software, the kind of thing where you can go to the website and sign up right now, give it your credit card, get an account, and now you're using the software. That's product-led growth. No salesperson had to sell you on it. You just went and got it, and then you upgrade to a higher tier and give them more money. So as a product manager, I love it because I want to be product-led, and investors like it because it tends to drive really dependable revenue. It can lead to a little bit of subscription fatigue, and I think that might be something you want to talk about in a minute. And obviously pros and cons to everything, but that is in a nutshell what product-led growth is.
Yeah, I would love to chime in a little bit, and just kind of building upon that. I think having a good self-serve strategy and I'll say optimized onboarding strategy and processes in place are key to that. So kind of creating as less friction as possible on acquisition of new folks, and then leading into things like paywalls and other areas where you can then convert them, whether it's a free customer or whether it's a smaller, lower tier customer, into that higher paying revenue generating and growth generating area, if you may.
Yeah. How does product-led, Mark, how do you find that product-led, how do you describe product-led growth, I guess, in contrast to I guess, more classical, traditional approaches to a company, I guess, versus sales-led or market-driven approaches?
Yeah, I was actually about to chime in. I think one way to look at product-led growth, from my experiences, you need to really consider the overall experience of the user. So it doesn't just stop with the product itself, but I believe the post-purchase experience is part of that. So the entire journey for the user, from the sign-up phase through the product usage and then support, is another aspect of that. So it's a holistic view of the product that should be considered.
Yeah. I thank you so much for bringing customer and user experience into it. Super important.
Yeah, I think something that I've been noticing in the industry and kind of driving to that methodology is just mapping out the user journey goes a long way, right? Not just thinking through where they buy and how they're going to use it, but overall kind of mapping out that user journey. Where does that upsell opportunity come in? Where do you potentially build in features that are going to be able to provide value to the customer, but then also help generate that revenue, rather than, and that just goes back to that tiered subscription approach and trying to build those levels of tiers within that journey, if you may.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do you bundle them is always a really fun question.
Understood. When you're when in structuring a product-led growth strategy, do I think about success differently? What are those key indicators for success that I should be looking at if I am attempting or doing a product-led approach?
Time to value is a big one. You want to know that folks who have signed up are seeing some value in your product as fast as possible. And of course, the trick is in defining what is value in this context. It's different by product and it may be different by customer or user. And so, I've seen so many folks say, we need to measure time to value. And I go, okay, what's value? And they can't tell me. And so that's what you have to think about first.
Yeah. I think retention is also another big component as well.
Retention, and then it's cousin churn.
Yes.
Yeah,
I guess.
think
in what way is that? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think to Laura's point, the value proposition and really kind of getting that on paper is something that is key along the way, right? And iterating on that and really kind of socializing it internally, externally while you're in the pilot phase or the POC phase, and I'll say the R&D phase really is necessary, because that's where you then can nail down time to value. If you aren't kind of putting that on paper, or even a back of the napkin approach of a value prop is necessary, because if not, you're just going to kind of go in circles and potentially end up in a build trap as well.
Absolutely. You keep touching on something that I think gets overlooked a lot of time, is that so much of the success of a product or the success of product management in general comes down to the work you did up front in defining what you're actually doing and who you're doing it for and why you're doing it. If we're asking these questions, once we've already got the product launched, you're a little behind the 8 ball.
You got it. And I think that's that pivot of product-led strategy versus customer-led or a sales-led strategy, where back in the day, right? I'll say organizations that aren't following product-led strategies, let's put it that way, they'll end up in that trap, right? Of the sales organization told them something, or they listened to support and customers, and now they've gone off and started building things, and now they're in a place where product management is a site that they just did not look at properly. So that's the areas that product-led strategies really come in and provide the most value.
Yeah.
Right. With the
You
sales
just
line.
mentioned, Raheel. You just mentioned. Actually, Mark, let me just hit this, and then we'll go over to you. Raheel, you mentioned something about customers there, and I think an area that people often ask a lot of questions about is when I do a product-led strategy, does customer service, does customer engagement suffer? Especially people, I think a lot of the thinking is I'm going to go all about just cramming features down people's throats, and I'm not talking to customers, or maybe that's what I am doing. Raheel, you wanna debate that, clarify that?
Sure. I think single customer feedback or building something around one or two or a minority of your customer base is what I'm trying to kind of avoid or leading us into the conversation into. I think product-led strategy has a pretty heavy voice of customer and really insights from customer approach, if you may. So you have to kind of build that feedback loop and really be able to go and get the right amount of feedback from your customers to really have a good product-led strategy. I'm not saying you have to completely cut them out. I think a big chunk of that strategy is to really be able to get in front of the right customers, talk to the right customers, and then of course build that product and the feature set around that as well, and vet their feedback. Right? I think that's a key one. If you go off and start listening to anybody and everybody, that can also put you in a bad position.
You just mentioned talking to the right. How do I talk to the right customers? How do I know who are the right customers that I should be talking to?
Yeah, so I think kind of building that I'll say KPIs around that, if you may, as to what you're looking to prove out, understanding your own customer base and then who your target market's going to be is key to that. So kind of having that mixed approach, if you may, of understanding who you're going to want to be targeting, who are the best folks to talk to, and coming up with a nice mix of those type of buckets, if you may.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
You can
Mark?
sometimes. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I agree.
We'll do Mark, and then I'll go over to you, Laura.
I think the question you asked a moment ago, Jeremy, was really interesting about whether the customer service aspect would suffer at all. I recently had an experience with Apple, and I think Apple is a great example of a product-led organization where we had purchased AppleCare for a product, and it expired. I renewed the AppleCare, had to take the laptop in for repairs, and they still tried to charge me, but they ended up making it right for me. And I felt that was part of what I expected as a customer of Apple, is that they would just make it right. And they did eventually. But I think that's where the holistic approach of the entire customer journey, from the purchase experience through customer support, is tightly coupled throughout the journey for the customer.
Laura?
Yeah, for sure. I was going to kind of play off what Raheel was saying about KPIs and getting in front of customers. There's always this push and pull between qualitative and quantitative data. And I think one of my favorite ways they can interact is if you look at your quant data, a lot of times you will see trends in it that don't give you specific details necessarily. There's, correlation, but you don't know if there's causation, things like that. But it can give you enough information to know where to look more specifically for your qualitative information, which is, a lot more expensive and time consuming to get. So you want to be a lot more targeted with that research.
Gotcha. The product-led growth, like there's conferences, there's papers, articles. You see a lot of stuff out there about You'll see PLG all over the place. Is PLG just kind of a passing fad, a bubble that's about to burst, or is this something that's going to be a more sustained transition that we're about to see?
I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's a really viable model. It's a really good model in a lot of ways. As a product person, I might be biased. but I'm going to say product-led growth is good. I do think it's, it's a tool in our arsenal, right? And whenever there's something new and trendy and sexy, there's always a push to just make everything follow that trend, right? I'm going to say something controversial yet brave. We're seeing that now with AI, right? Everything has to go in the direction of the trend, whether it makes sense or not. And the next step in that trend is for companies to pull back where they're realizing it maybe didn't make so much sense. So I think we may see some pulling back. Folks, like I said, they're getting a lot of subscription fatigue. And so PLG may not be such a great growth driver in the future. I don't know that we've quite hit that point yet, but it's probably coming. So I don't think it's going away, but I don't think it's going to be the end all be all forever.
What do you see? Are you seeing, is there a limiting factor? Are there certain patterns that you're seeing that cause you to believe that it's not a permanent long-term thing, but might have an end?
It's not necessarily that it's not a long-term thing for certain companies and certain products. I think it's more that it just doesn't necessarily make sense for every company and every product that is doing it. And those companies will probably start to pull back. And those may be things with, heavier onboarding requirements, or, they've got customers with a more complicated buying process that it's just not going to work like that. Or things where maybe you don't need to have a lot of new features added all of the time, and therefore it's a little bit harder to keep driving that growth with the product.
Gotcha. Raheel, do you see that are there certain industries or certain types of verticals that you found that just doesn't work for PLG, or maybe it does, or maybe that's too strong. It doesn't work, or it's limited in some fashion or another?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about that as Laura was talking. I think heavy service-led industries that don't really have a product tied to them, potentially, I could see that as being a challenge. A product that's highly customizable out the gate and doesn't really have a base bundle, if you may, like those type of areas are definitely a bit challenging. I mean, even in the AI space, I feel like there is areas where right out the gate, something might not be a good fit for PLG. And my answer to the original question, I feel like I feel like the drive towards PLG is definitely there, especially in the environment of high interest rates, money being tight, right? So I feel like VCs and PEs are going to start really looking at where they're spending their money. And if it's not a heavy, good product-led organization or product-led strategy, an organization that uses PLG, they might have their challenges a little bit, right? Because I think gone are the days of cheap money where folks can just go off and start building and using money. So having some methodology, some framework, those type of things are going to be necessary. But going back to your next question on which industries, I think it really depends on if it's service-led, if it's highly customizable or not. I know I touched on a few different things there.
Gotcha. Yeah. Now I've got a question from Jordan Bergstrom. He asks, how would you make PLG successful for a B2B enterprise? Product that requires a significant amount of configuration for the product to align with the customer's particular needs. Raheel, you can take that, or I'll go over to Mark or Laura. Whoever wants to take it.
Without naming names, no, I've been there in a specific organization, and I think the coming up with a base level offering is always good. Even for in the B2B space, I think finding ways to come up with, or finding the feature sets that are being used most, if you may, having that as your initial bundle offering can always go a long way. And of course, then and that's where that upsell and growth strategy comes in as well, right? So having a bit of a cheaper tier for the folks that have the base level functionality and getting them to quickly be onboarded. Whereas the heavy configuration folks, then you can, of course, charge them more and things like that. That kind of answers that question. And then, of course, Laura, go ahead. Or Mark, sorry.
Yeah, Laura.
Go ahead, Laura.
Yeah. So, I think that is one of the cases where PLG maybe isn't always the best option. But there are things you can do, especially if it's the type of product where one person or one department can start using the product, and then evangelize it within the broader organization. At some point, procurement's going to get involved, and then you're going to need sales folks, and depending on the complexity of the project, you're going to need sales engineers and a POC and all of that. So it does become a little heavier and more onerous, but in those early stages, you can use a more self-service sign up subscription type model to get folks in the organization hooked.
Yeah, I think in my past, I've experienced this on a developer portal where the developers leverage the portal for APIs. They're downloading APIs, which require a lot of configuration, a lot of integration. So the time to value we measured, and it took 6 months sometimes for the integration of an API. And I think the way that you can try to overcome some of those obstacles are automating and through self-service as well. Try to identify and automate as much as you can with the configuration, and try to make as much of it as self-service as possible to accelerate the time to value.
Mark, that's excellent point. The example that I was alluding to, that's exactly what we did. We ended up building an automated onboarding and implementation layer that essentially helped kind of get from pre-sales to post-sale pretty quickly, and a little bit into implementation. But at some point, we did have folks jumping in, depending on your configuration.
So from Brennan Richards wants to know, and I'm working on. I'm going to try to paraphrase what Brennan asked. Is how would you conduct a product-led growth within kind of a growing service business? What are the pros and cons of going product-led growth? Tips for shifting from a service business to a product business.
I love this question, as I get a lot of inquiries from service-based companies that have built a product, and they're looking to make that shift into being more of a product business, because it is much more scalable, right, than a service-based business. And typically what happens is that company will build a product internally for their own use. It helps them deliver their own service. And then they get some clients who are asking, hey, could we use that? And they realize we've got something here. And where I have seen it be really successful is when the company really commits to the product, really commits to, we are going to be a product business, and they form a real plan and a strategy around it, and they put money behind it and resources behind it. Where I have seen it fail is when they kind of try to dip a toe in and go, well, we're still going to be a service business, but we're going to try and we're going to get a couple people to build the product on the side and see how it goes. It's not going to go well. So the commitment and the resourcing is really, really crucial there. But it absolutely can happen successfully.
So as organizations grow, a big complaint that I've seen, a big challenge I've seen, is with respect to scaling product-led growth, scaling the strategies behind it. What have you seen work? What have you seen not work with respect to scaling PLG? Mark?
I don't. I mean, as I think about it, I don't have any examples off the top of my head of where we had to scale, where I've had to scale product-led growth.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
I can say, kind of building off what Laura said, is going in on that all-in approach, but really having a product leader in place. It doesn't have to be title doesn't have to be product management, right? But having some level of a product leader, or that role of someone who's holistically thinking about the product, scaling the product, and really being that advocate, if you may, or evangelist of that product is necessary. And that goes back to the money piece as well, right? Putting that person in place, giving them some leverage, giving them some strong power, if you may, or backing, if you may, and support, if you may, is necessary, because if you just have your BAU folks, right, or your operational folks that have been working on either side of the fence, if you just have them kind of leading and trying to build a product and they're not all in on it, they have their day jobs, if you may, that ends up just putting you, just really maxing out resources and really straining resources, if you may. So having that person is necessary, in my opinion.
Yeah. So the question I posed at the beginning, which was about sharing a story where a product-led strategy failed or stumbled. I would be curious, who here has something that they might want to share? And feel free, if you're in the chat room, to share as well. What went wrong? How was it addressed?
I think one example I have is probably about a decade ago. It was a new product introduction, and the focus and input I received from customers were existing customers. So I think it never really took off. The product never really took off the way that we were expecting it to. And I think that's directly related to us keeping too narrow of a focus in the input mechanisms that we have, the customers that we were focusing on and getting the input from. So I think that was one example of where it failed. Yeah.
Anyone else?
I think, the one real failure that I saw was when this company, again, didn't really resource their product very well, but Raheel had a really good insight of, you need that good product leader. And that's not something that I always think to say, because obviously you need a product leader for your product, but it is a really great point that a lot of organizations don't necessarily put that in place. And so this company that I'm talking about, they had, an expert in their subject matter, like a domain expert, and they had a technical expert. They didn't have anyone focused on the product, and they had not really considered who is our customer here. And they had a lot of very, very big, anyone could use this, anyone could buy the product. And of course, you have to focus down quite a bit. There were a lot of UI overhauls. And, and this was, I'm trying to be vague, but they kept asking me to review their UX. And I kept saying, okay, but who's the customer? Because that matters in a UX review, right? And so they never quite got their heads around what they were doing and why. And I think an absence of a real product leader definitely impacted that.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say, going back, and I think that goes back to the challenge question as well. Having a good product leader is great, but then not giving them the support to get that alignment. So in large organization, even in a smaller organization, this can happen pretty quickly, is the cross-functional teams are not aligned on the goal, right? And now the product leaders trying to move mountains to really get that alignment, but not giving him or her that support, kind of sets them up for failure, if you may. That's where I've seen it fail.
Absolutely.
So, and you first, Laura. Then I've got
just
a follow-up
everything
question
that we've just been. I want to say everything we've been saying does not just apply to product-led growth. This is really any product at all, right? You need good leadership. You need to know what you're doing and why. You need to put resourcing into it. But I think when you're talking about PLG specifically, it becomes even more important.
Right.
So to my follow-up, everyone's been talking about product leader, about the importance for product leaders. Even Laura, you went as far as to say, well, it's obvious, but I want to actually emphasize it. And so the question I wanted to ask was, is there something different about the kind of product leader that's needed? Is there a certain type of skill set or a certain kind of more important part of that skill set that a product leader needs to have if they're driving PLG strategies? I see, Mark, you're nodding yes, so I'll go to
you. Yeah, I think I totally agree. I think some of those skill sets that are required for this is somebody who enjoys talking to customers and enjoys talking to people, is empathetic, and has a great deal of empathy for the customers and understanding what their pain points are. Somebody who's willing to listen and active listening, I think, is an important aspect of that as well.
Yeah,
Any standout? Go ahead, Raheel. Like any standout features, any standout skill sets, something that maybe sets this product leader apart from some of your other, I guess, more classic product leaders?
Oh, I didn't know
Raheel?
Mark wanted to go. Oh, I was going to piggyback off what Mark was saying from listening to external customers or getting that voice of customer from external folks, but also internal folks, being able to kind of herd the group, if you may, and really making sure that you're making them felt as well, because it's going back to the point I made earlier on alignment and getting everybody's buy-in. Again, not only listening to external folks, but getting those internal folks aligned is a key piece that this person needs to have.
Great. Any other comments on this or any other part about product-led strategies, PLG in general? Oh, wait, as feel free to say something, but I'm looking to see if we have any. Oh, we got one other question. We got one or two other questions. So let me just quickly go to them. So another question from Jordan is, look at that. Jordan and I were asking the same question. I'm going to skip that, Jordan, because I already asked that. Brennan Richards is asking, what ways have you begun to leverage AI tools in your team? Brennan, we're actually going to come back. I'll try to come back to that one in a little bit. But right now, what I'm going to do is we're going to transition over to our trivia segment of the evening. And with that said, I'm going to go through. I'm going to ask the question. All I ask for people to do: feel free to make comments. Feel free to talk amongst yourselves here on camera, in the chat room. I would just ask everyone, save your answers, save the specific answers for later when we get to the answer portion of the event tonight. So with that said, let me go over to the trivia section.
TPG Live trivia segment. Which company expanded its getaway ethos to the role of product manager?
I'll leave that for all of you to ponder. So which company expanded its getaway ethos to the role of product manager? Hopefully I've given you enough context clues and maybe a visual clue in there as well in coming up with the answer here. I don't know if I'm looking around the room. I'm trying to see if I'm looking deep into everyone's eyes to see if they have the answers. Feel free if you wanted to comment or say anything, but like I said, just don't say the answer. Feel free. With that said, we'll definitely get to the answer portion of this in a little bit later. With that, I want to go to the question that got posed right before the trivia section. To Brennan Richards was asking about what ways have you begun to leverage AI tools in your teams? How do you see AI impacting your day-to-day operations over the next 12 months? All right, so for the year of 2024, what's AI gonna do to you? Or for you? I'll say for you because they're AI tools.
So as a product manager, I'm excited about some of the AI tools that are starting to come out around user story writing, documentation, some of the really like nuts and bolts aspects of the things that we do every day that are not necessarily so human, right? So I can talk to customers and figure out what something needs to happen in a product. But then I have to go and I have to compose a whole bunch of user stories and acceptance criteria and all of that. And that's incredibly, massively important. And it definitely needs human eyes on it to check. But there are so many user stories that are pretty much the same over and over and over again. So there are AI tools being developed right now that will kind of handle a lot of that for you. You say, here's the customer, here's pretty much what I want this thing to do. And it just generates for you And then what you do is, kind of go through and review. So I think that's really exciting. And it's one of those things that truly augments a human product manager and, doesn't replace us, which I appreciate that.
Is this aspirational right now, or are there specific tools that you're using that actually are writing, I guess, user stories, user acceptance?
There are, and if you come back to me, I'll give you names. Because I get
Please pass those along, because I was going to comment that I think that's one area I would love to see AI take off, is in helping us to complete those task-based, have the task-heavy component of product management. So yeah, I haven't encountered it yet, but I'm definitely anxious for it to come.
Exactly.
Rahil?
I'll say even just using ChatGPT to do your research is a big one, right? I think I think it's taken so much off your plate when you're just gone are the days of just sitting there and Google and doing different white papers and read. So getting that first initial couple of levels of research through ChatGPT has been a game changer, honestly, in the product world. And then I think just some of the note-taking ones and things like that. Have not used any of the story writing ones or explored them just yet. Not yet. Yeah.
For myself, I kind of use for myself, I kind of use ChatGPT for, I'd say, almost everything. I use ChatGPT for just about everything that's out there. And for Rahil, I'd say just be careful if you're having to do in your research. You might be able to get it to uncover facts that didn't previously exist, which I don't know, might be good, might be bad, might help with some of the creativity there. There's a lot of tools out there, and I'm definitely seeing a lot of the conversation. I think AI is becoming inescapable as a topic, whether it is tools or features that people are looking to implement. Emil Shah is also asking a question about talking about the AI conflict dilemma. I'm not sure I know what that phrase means, but let me read the rest. As a PM, I'm biased to push and work on AI offerings, even though it might not be the right case. It might not be the right thing to incorporate it into at that current time. So I guess that would be the definition of the AI conflict dilemma. Is anyone else facing this? I'm going to give it the AI CD. Is anyone else facing this dilemma?
Not yet, but I think it's going to hit all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's again,
how are you
one of trends.
How are you planning on dealing with it?
Yeah, judiciously. I think, it's one of those. I'm very well aware that anything I say that is not all in on AI is potentially career limiting, right? But at the same time, I know that building stuff that doesn't really do anyone any good is also career limiting. So, it's going to be putting those political negotiation skills to the test, I think.
Yeah, I think getting that, going back to the user journey and value prop and time to value on paper, and really getting that part done and doing it religiously, right? And also kind of building that feedback loop and really making sure that you're doing that along the way of the development phase and a post go-to-market is going to be very necessary with AI, right? It's expensive. We all know. Yeah, building a POC or even getting something out the door is going to be pretty expensive. As I mentioned, money is expensive now around the world, right? So you can't just go get pushed into building something or an AI offering, if you may. I think getting that value prop, getting all of those, doing that homework done earlier on, and then taking the results of voice of customer, surveys, all of those things along what your vision is, it's going to be necessary. And then really socializing that with the executives or the leadership and whoever your internal stakeholders is going to be key to get that buy-in, right? Or even say no to that offering that was potentially proposed, because now you have tangible data and to say, look, we thought this was going to be great, but the customers don't want it, or it's not really driving that value, or it's just going to be too expensive to build, and now you're not going to be on the green on the profit side.
Yeah. A few years ago, this was blockchain. I can't tell you how many people said, oh, are you going to do blockchain? And I would say, well, I don't know. What are you building? What do we need to do? Do we need blockchain? Because if we do, sure, yes, good, great. And if we don't, then why would we do it? So I feel the same way about AI and any technology. It is extremely cool, but it's not right for every single situation. So, and I think part of our job as product managers is to make that case one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just have to say no. If the situation doesn't warrant it, that's where our skills as product leaders, we need to put our foot down and say no if it's not right.
Yeah, Emil has I guess an ominous quote: "Embrace AI, or it will embrace you." I think the topic of AI is inescapable. I think to Mark's point, you got as far as that AI dilemma that we're talking about. I don't see it as much of a dilemma to me. AI, it's another tool to just have in your arsenal of technology that we might have. I'd say the thing to be careful about is, what problem are you solving? If you're solving a problem and AI turns out to be the answer, cool. If not, then don't use it. And also, I think in just the way that I think we do modern product management, it's iterate, it's using lean methodology, it's taking those incremental steps, and you can do that the same way with AI as well. You don't have to go whole hog into pulling together your own large language model or mega data set to start testing hypotheses and iterating. I always recommend, even if you think it might be AI, iterate into it if that's where the iterations take you. Don't start there and try to back into a solution. But I think that's kind of points to some of those just classical dilemmas around product development of, ooh, let's build this feature. Oh, wait, where are the users? I think it's definitely a challenge. There's a lot of pressure out there, and I think for a lot of product people, this is man, you're going to really be earning that title this year. And I'd say, not saying no, but let's make sure we understand why we're asking for the different things that are coming from, whether it's internal stakeholders, external customers, what have you. So I wanted to kind of transition to our next topic now, which is about I call it barrier to entry. What are those common hurdles, those challenges that product people have to overcome with respect to becoming product managers? What have people seen? And just kind of like, as I posed a kind of that open question at the top of the previous topic, I'd love to hear what sort of significant barriers people in the chat, as well as in the room, and in the room we'll get to it a little bit later. What sort of obstacles people have encountered? How have they overcome it? Or more importantly, what barriers are they encountering that they haven't figured out how to overcome? And I'd be more than happy to explore it here in the roundtable. With that said, I'd love to just kind of go around the room here. We've all faced our own personal barriers, obstacles, challenges, getting into product management and progressing in the role. What are some barriers that you've overcome in tackling this, in tackling product management and being a product manager? Mark, let me start with you.
No, good question. I think for me, the barriers I encountered throughout my journey I actually came into product management starting as a QA engineer, and I leveraged my product knowledge to write requirements. And so I started more as a systems analyst. And it just naturally evolved. But at some point, I did hit a ceiling, which was the lack of, and I think I see it in the chat comments, lack of MBA. So going back to school and gaining MBA credits really elevated my career after that point. It was just having the basic business knowledge in certain areas that allowed me to advance further.
So that's interesting. So you mentioned lack of MBA. Now, was it a lack of MBA in getting the product management job, or getting promoted, getting a raise?
Getting promoted, getting
Okay.
promoted in the skill set, the general skill set, the business skill set. In fact, understanding competition, understanding segmentation. Just the basic, some of the basic business skills. I just didn't have that. But going back to school and working towards my MBA allowed me to advance.
The reason I ask is I'd say in general, if I'm hiring a new product manager, MBA is usually more of a turn-off than a turn-on, because when I'm hiring, I'm looking for practical skills.
Yeah.
I'm looking for someone who's done it, and I've usually found that someone who has an MBA, man, they've got a lot of theory, and they know a lot of keywords, but now that I've hired them and I need them to go to manage the stakeholders through some tricky politics inside the company, that MBA is not going to be up for that task.
Right.
I'll chime in here. I think that Mark is right. This used to be I won't say back in the day, but probably over the last decade. But it's pivoting pretty fast. I've seen that over the last 5 years, especially. I think having a lack of MBA or not having an MBA, I think the folks are looking for that more and more. And to all the points that Jeremy just mentioned, I think it's the shift is happening in a good way. But it used to be the case to get that promotion or get that leadership role type thing.
And
Laura?
of to add on that, really good true product management is so incredibly multidisciplinary, which is why I love it. And it really takes kind of a certain sort of mindset to wrap your head around all these different kinds of disciplines and fields and be able to talk to engineers and designers and customers and executives and investors and all of those stakeholders and really get them all aligned on the same page and understand what they're talking about and where they're coming from. And that's something that takes experience, right? You have to do a little bit of each of those things. You don't have to be an expert, but you have to touch on them here and there enough that you can kind of speak intelligently to them. And I've seen more recently a lot of folks going, product management seems really cool and sexy and it pays well, so I want to do it. So how do I get started? And to me, what should I major in? And it's like, it doesn't really matter what you majored in so much necessarily as what are you doing along the way? And I think you need all those different kinds of experiences. It's not a job that you can do really, really well right out of college. There are definitely companies with good APM programs and things like that kind of get you skilled up, and they'll start you with more BA type work, which is a great start. But I think to really, really be great at this job, you just need to do a lot of things, and that takes time.
So, Laura, I wanted to get back to kind of that initial question of what sort of hurdles have you experienced? What sort of are those? In addition, what are some of the hurdles that you've seen with respect to people getting into product management?
Well, for one thing, when I first went to college, I actually started as a computer science major and I transferred out of that. But when I started, I was one of 10 women in a class of about 120. So, that's always challenging when you have to prove that you deserve to be in every single room, right? For, the first 10 years of your career.
Well, speaking as a Carnegie Mellon, I was going to say, speaking as a Carnegie Mellon alum, my class was 100 people. When I graduated, so I understand.
Yeah, and how many of them were girls? So
5.
Not a lot, probably. Yeah,
5.
that's so that's definitely a challenge. But the other thing that I want to mention is, I spent the first chunk of my career in traditional enterprise in Fortune 500, and I was always doing business analysis or project management or, talking to customers. And every time I tried to put them all together, this is before I even knew the term product management, I kept trying to put them together. I kept trying to say, well, I'm building this thing out, but I should also be determining what it should do. Or I'm writing all these requirements. I'd like to see it through to the end. And I kept getting told, well, that's not your job. We split that into a million different departments. And, so the barrier for me largely was there really wasn't product management. There weren't those jobs in the places where I was working. And it took a while for me to kind of lift my head up and say, oh, other people are actually doing this. This is a job I can have, this thing I've been fighting to do for 10 years. So that was incredibly exciting when I figured that out.
Mark, what are some other common hurdles you've seen with respect to people getting into product management?
I mean, recently I've mentored a few interns, and that seemed to have worked out real well. Where throughout their rotation, I've been able to, well, we were short staffed in this case, but we were able to hand off a project to him and just work with him collaboratively and guide him along the way, and he was able to receive the full experience and the full journey of bringing a new product, I guess. I mean, it wasn't necessarily a product, but an enhancement to live, and it worked out real well for him. And I guess it was just the lack of certain skills, understanding how to interview customers and how to gather requirements. Some of those basic skills, I think, that he learned throughout the process.
Yeah, I'd say Zain Yusuf is talking about bringing up a question that I wanted to get to, in that right now I'd say a lot of folks are seeing maybe an oversaturated job market. Looks like we lost Mark. People are seeing an oversaturated job market in product management, and the question I've got is, what advice do you guys have for kind of standing out in the market, in the job market that we have right now? Are there enough product jobs? Are they of the right quality? And what should people be doing to better differentiate themselves?
I'm going to give the answer that
Laura?
everyone says, and we're all tired of hearing it, but seriously, networking is the thing to do right now. Just going out and talking to as many folks as you can. I think what I have been seeing around the communities that I'm in is the folks who are getting the better jobs did not get them by applying on LinkedIn or Indeed or whatever. They got them by working their network. And that's a whole skill set in itself. So, it can be tricky if you haven't been doing it all along. It's tricky and time consuming to start, but it's worth doing for sure.
But what do you say to those folks that are new to product management? And so when I say that, I'm assuming if you're new to product management, maybe you're coming out of college, maybe you're just entering the job market, or you're early in your career in the job market. You might not have that robust network that every one of us here has. What do they do?
And this kind of gets back to what I was saying earlier is, I don't know that I would recommend jumping straight into product management, right? You got to come from somewhere else, whether that is QA or business analysis or, design, engineering, customer success. I've known people who went into product who were former educators. That's a great background, actually. It's a surprisingly great background. And so if you can start to kind of get some of those different skills, whether it is, subject matter expertise in something you're really interested in, and then you can go into product management in that industry, or do something like the BA work and talking to customers and doing some of the market research, whatever. I think that would probably be the best bet, rather than trying to jump straight into a product management job where there's 500 applicants and they've all got the experience, and the network. Probably at this time is a great way to go and build up that experience. You'll be a stronger candidate.
Yeah. Emil Shah is asking for numbers. He wants to know how many coffee chats, networking events should people be doing? Do people recommend be done on a weekly basis?
How fast
Does anyone have any? You go ahead.
That's a tricky one. I won't answer it directly, Emil, but something that I try to do whenever I go to networking events is I come up with a number, maybe 5 or 10 contacts that I have to hit before I leave, or make, if you may. So, meeting 5 people and having a decent conversation with them, and of course, adding them on LinkedIn or getting their business card, and then being able to follow up with them is something that I try to do. How many events really depends on the area, the focus, right? That there's a lot of variables in that question, if you may, and depending on the time of the season too. So, and I live in Atlanta. We have a lot of stuff throughout the year, but then December kind of fizzles out a little bit. But then there's a lot of webinar stuff, right? So, but kind of making use out of them is where I was going with the answer of 5 or 10 or whatever for how many people you want to meet, because it's great to go to these things. But if you're not really actively trying to come up with that KPI and hit it, to keep it with our corporate world terminology, you're not going to make those interactions as fruitful.
Yeah. And, a lot of it comes down to how much time do you have and how fast do you want to build your network? You can have, there's, what is the old adage, to have lunch with someone different every day, right? That's a lot of planning work to set up all those lunches. That's a lot of outreach. I don't think most humans can do that, especially if you already have a job, right? But, and I do a lot of my networking for business development, so it's a little bit different. But when I'm really doing a heavy business development push, I try to have 2 or 3 really functional conversations a week, right? Where I'm not just kind of casually having coffee. I'm like really talking to people and trying to grow that network. But I think even that is a lot to maintain that cadence. So even if you're having 1 or 2 a month is, that's great if that's all you can do. So it really depends on what's your bandwidth, what's your appetite for talking to lots of different people, and how fast do you want to move?
Yeah. For me, I probably haven't invested as much into the networking aspect as I probably should. But I think I do agree with Laura, whatever works for your schedule. The important thing is that you're keeping and maintaining those relationships and the connection between those relationships. What I do try to tell someone new to the product management career path, in lieu of networking, there's other ways that you can gain knowledge through podcasts. I think this medium is excellent for somebody new in the industry, where they can attend a meetup, hear from different experts on what their experiences are. If you can find a mentoring opportunity, especially, I think that's another angle. But you definitely need to look at different possibilities and not just focus on the networking aspect of it.
And I see a conversation.
Yeah, I would also add.
Oh, go ahead. No,
yeah,
please finish.
I was going to jump to that in just a second, but I wanted to also add that we are the product we are the product group here as well, and so I definitely encourage you to go to your local chapter of the product group. We're in cities all around the world. If you'd like to start a local in-person meetup, and that's how we started. We're virtual and in person. I'd say always trying to be in person is our priority. Reach out. You can always reach out to me. And if you don't have a local chapter and you'd like to start one, but if you do have a local chapter, I know London right now is doing a whole bunch of really great meetups. Great for networking, great for meeting a lot of product people, and the events are very much like what we're doing here. Just you'll see everyone at the round table, not just there's not just an on-camera portion of it when it's in person. So definitely, I encourage you to check out the product group meetups as well. Something Jordan brought up. In the comments was, if you do want to become a PM and you're new to the field of product management, you need to be able to answer a very important question. And I agree with this question: is why do you want to be a product manager? And I'll go as far as saying there is a correct answer and there is an incorrect answer to that question. And so you really need to think about. You kind of need to do some soul searching as to what specifically at a foundational level for you makes you want to become a product manager and get into that field. It isn't meant for everybody, definitely isn't. And I don't say that as a gatekeeping sort of thing. I'm just talking about the types of skills, the types of personalities, the types of drive that people have that will propel them forward in the field and be successful in that career. Something else that was mentioned by Abel Almos was he talks about there's a lot of gatekeeping in the product management industry, and with that sentiment, I kind of wanted to touch on another thing that we haven't talked about, and I think it's an important topic to mention here, especially as we're talking about roadblocks. Hurdles to getting into product management, especially when you look at a lot of the news right now. There's a lot of DEI initiatives across the industry. Every big tech company has reduced or cut DEI, diversity and equity initiatives in companies. And so I'm curious as to what people are seeing with respect to hurdles with respect to DEI, and what people are seeing maybe as the emerging impact of these cuts in DEI.
So I haven't seen anything specifically regarding DEI cuts. I do know that, so I'm in a community called Women in Product, and up until about a year ago, most of the conversations were around, what's a good framework for doing this, or how do I handle this situation? And over the past year, most of it's been, I need a job, help me find a job. And one of the things that I find, really kind of distressing is that a lot of folks come in with stories of like, I took maternity leave, I came back and they put me on a PIP immediately. Or, I have a new boss who is a man and he's not listening to anything I say and he talks over me all the time. How do I handle this? And, it's nothing new, but it's a little sad to see that it's still happening 20 years after I entered this field. But, I think DEI groups, though, don't necessarily address those kinds of things because they're very, very subtle. You can't fix it with a policy. And so, the reason we added the I to diversity was because companies got really good at hiring lots of different kinds of people from different backgrounds, and they still weren't very great about actually giving them a seat at the table and a real voice in the organization. And I think that's something that still needs work and improvement. It is getting better. I don't want to be all doom and gloom. It's definitely getting better, but there's still a lot of work to do.
I don't know, when I hear those anecdotes, it doesn't feel to me like it might be getting better for if it is, I feel it might be the exception. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely I'd say in the concern camp when I see the reductions, and then also where even anecdotally that those types of comments are becoming more prevalent. Coming back from maternity leave and being put on a PIP. Like there's
been a lot of those actually. It's that one really gives me a lot of pause.
Yeah, like I think some of what we learned in the pandemic was about it kind of brought that flexibility to people, and it started to help, at least in some aspects, when you could do some of that remote work. But even that's such a minor thing. What are some of those initiatives? What are some of those things that companies could be doing or should be doing for DEI to kind of create that better workplace, or to kind of eliminate maybe some of these biases or hurdles in hiring and recruiting processes?
So there are people whose entire job is to speak on this topic. And so I don't feel I don't think any of us are totally qualified to really give a great answer here. So I want to preface with that. But, from what I've heard from those folks, flexibility is a huge one, like you said, because, like I know someone who would work a full day and, take a big chunk out of the middle to spend time with their kid and then finish their work at night. And that's, that's great when you can do that. Or you can, if you don't have kids, you can take your dog to the groomer, you can give care to your parents, you can get to a medical appointment, right? So that really helps a huge swath of people who are caregivers, who are maybe part of the disabled community, who, whatever the case may be. But the bigger issue, I think, is who are you hiring, especially in leadership positions? If you're hiring folks who aren't going to really put in the effort to, build diverse teams and include everyone in a real meaningful way, there is no DEI department on earth that can fix that. So I think ultimately it really comes down to who's at the top of the company.
I do think I think you bring up a good point with respect to who's at the top of the company. Like I start out that with anything though, when it comes to product. If you don't have the right folks at the top, product strategy is not going to work. If you don't have the right people at the top, DEI is not going to work either.
It applies to everything, right?
Yeah, because it's and I think that comes from some of my own personal experience where I thought I could change the company, but little did I understand earlier in my career, man, I wasn't gonna. I might be changing things in my local bubble, but I wasn't gonna make that bigger dent that I was hoping to make at those points in my career. I think I heard someone talking.
Yeah, no, I was going a bit micro level of really being intentional with it and having a culture of being intentional with DEI, whether it's product strategies. And that comes from the top, frankly. That's what Laura was mentioning. So having that top-down approach and having leaders that listen in from bottom up is necessary as well. But being intentional with it is necessary in the day and age that we live in.
Yeah, I think.
Sure. But go ahead, Mark.
No, I think that's a good point, Rahil, is being intentional about it. I mean, the majority of my career has been spent at large companies, and absolutely, sometimes you feel like they're just checking the box, making sure that you've attended the appropriate training, but they're not addressing the day-to-day aspects of it. Unconscious bias, for example. How do you, without the proper training, we're not going to make the progress, and so companies need to invest in that.
Yeah, I want to push back on all of you right now. As the leaders, we're all leaders in our organizations. As those leaders, what are some initiatives maybe that you're currently employing right now? What are some of your current strategies right now that helps drive more inclusion, more diversity in your organizations?
So I am a one-person shop at the moment, but I do work with a lot of executives and founders and CEOs. And when I'm helping them through some hiring decisions, we won't typically have a very direct, you need to hire diverse candidates kind of a conversation, but I will always nudge them towards, hey, this person has a really great resume. You should consider them, or, really think about the experience and the skills you want in this role and the culture fit and all of that, and try to guide them to some more open-ended conversations. I did work with a company that was very diversity minded, which was great, and they had almost like a checklist of like, well, we have this kind of person and now we need to get this kind of person in our next role. And I kind of went, great intentions, maybe just be very, very open-minded in hiring for the right person, and you'll find that you naturally get a more diverse team. But
Yeah.
so there's always a little bit of that, but I really appreciate that they were making the effort. The intention was there. It was great. And that is where maybe a dedicated DEI person could have just tweaked a little bit and helped
more
out.
than tweak.
But so that's usually where I will try to kind of just get my little like needles in of, who are you considering and who are we hiring and who am I like promoting for a position.
Yeah, I was gonna also. I worked with a company, or I a little for a short while, that actually helped that other misguided company fill those needs. You basically submitted your checklist, and they could find you the people that matched that checklist. The when it comes to DEI, like I found that like it starts with education. I think no matter how much we talk about diversity, especially when you're talking companies that span the globe or that are in lots of different countries, diversity means very different things in different parts of the world. And I'd say you could ask the question: do you are you inclusive? Do you have a diverse organization? And I think you would get lots of lots of companies all saying yes. But then you'd go and ask them to define it, and you'd be, I'd say, often befuddled by the answers to that definition that you would get as to what diversity is, what inclusion is. And I'm not, without going into any specific, or as I would say, bewildering answers I've gotten to this question that I've asked. I'd say you really have to start with education, and I don't mean one of those online things where you sit down and you look at slides. But you need to start really have open It needs to be more of kind of an open conversation around, almost like a roundtable thing, where people can feel safe in giving their answers, but also an environment where people are safe in correcting people's understandings as to what these different things are. And I think, to me, that's step one. I think then step two, and I think too many companies fall short of this, and other companies go too far, is with respect to how they're doing the recruiting. It needs to be more objective. It needs to not be driven by the hiring manager. It starts with, how are you writing the job description? What are the biases that are in there, and how do you kind of work some of those biases out? It comes to, how do you do the interviews? And with respect to when you are doing interviews, what are those? Know before the interview, what are the skills that you're looking for? How are you testing for those skills? And how are you objectively determining whether or not that person does or does not have that skill, or has an amazing amount of that skill, or just a little bit of it, to help calibrate when you bring them in, at what level you would bring them in, if you bring them in to a company where, and for myself, I also like to then put a committee in there that reviews that. I think some companies go too far. I think it's hard to calibrate. It takes a while to calibrate for each different company that you're in when you kind of do that. And then the last thing I would add, just from my own personal experience, you need to within the organization, again, to remove that bias, or minimize the bias, because you never remove all of it. To further minimize the bias, you have a career ladder, you have career progression that is transparent, that is objective, it can be objectively understood, objectively verifiable. Again, that is not dependent on that person's manager, whether or not they progress, but is dependent upon what skills they have and what skills they can demonstrate, and how they and where it's not, you're not meeting a quota as to, I can have 3 people that are excellent, and then 45 that are okay, and then 10 that are that we want to let go. Like, it's not about that quotas. It really needs to be much more of an objective system. And I speak to, I think in some places you can move the needle in that direction. Other places you can get a lot closer. I think some places also then go too far. I think maybe to Laura's example earlier. But I think there's a lot that I think people can be doing, and especially if you're in a leadership position, whether it's in your own organization or advising other organizations as to what can be done out there. So that's just my own personal experience and just in what I try to do in wherever I'm going. Because at the end of the day, like to not, I think for companies to see DEI as something that's good for PR they just miss the whole point. You're just missing so many skills, so many new ideas, so many new perspectives for your products that you're hurting your bottom line. I'll say crudely, but also just what a better office environment when you can just have so many more people with different perspectives, just kind of helping elevate everyone. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. But Laura, you wanted to say?
No, well, first of all, I really like your soapbox. I'll co-sign everything you just said. But also, yeah, a more diverse workplace is a more interesting workplace, in my opinion. So, that's the benefit right there.
I'd say you touched on it just a little bit, but building a better product and having a diverse workspace and talent, if you may, gives you so much of a different flavor and so much of a different perspective on a product that you may not get if you don't have a diverse workplace or team.
Yeah, you need different perspectives and different experiences coming to the table in order to innovate. I mean, that's just the basics of it.
Yep. We do have a question from the audience, and since I'm about to transition off of this topic, before I do, anyone else have anything that they wanted to add on hurdles to becoming a product manager and overcoming those hurdles? Going once, going twice.
I think we touched on this a little bit, but having the right mentorship and support group when getting into product management is so necessary. I think if I look back at my career, I transitioned from software development into project management and then finally product management. And if I didn't have some of the folks that helped me kind of make my transitions, I probably would have never been here. And then once you're in the role, having like a peer-led or mentor type, a senior person tagged with you or someone is necessary. And lastly, getting into product management, or folks I think had a lot of questions around that. How do you get into product management? What I always coach on is find an organization that has a decent product group and then go in as a different role if you can, right? If you're completely out of college or completely green into the industry, Laura had kind of mentioned that, right? You come in as a BA, come in as a QA, software developer, PM, project manager, whatever, but kind of look for a place that does have a decent product organization, because I will say I got burned by that.
How do you find such a place? How do I as an aspiring product manager, find a place that has a good product organization?
Goes back to the network.
I myself, as someone who's been in this industry for over 20 years, I would point to less than a handful, maybe two handfuls of companies that I would point to as having amazing product organizations. And even some of them, I would say, amazing product organization in part.
Sure. I think that to answer your question is really around the network, right? Having folks that you can talk to and understand from your network about the role, and also about the teams potentially.
Yeah, I would mention. Well, I'll just add two quick things. On that network front, if there's a company you're interested in, just reach out cold to other folks in LinkedIn if you just want to, just to learn about the product org. And so to kind of piggyback on what Raheel was just saying, just reach out to folks and say, hey, I'd love to learn about the product org. No pressure. I just want to, I want to understand, how you guys do product, what you do, and just point out hey, you're interested in getting into product management and it's an interesting company. You'll find more on average, I'd say people are willing to at least take 5-10 minutes to share their POV. Don't be late to the meeting or you'll lose those 5 or 10 minutes. But take advantage of that and reach out. I'd say don't be afraid of reaching out because you don't know, because everyone that knows that at some point they didn't know. Anyone else have anything they wanted to add to this?
Yeah, I think, in having as many of those conversations as possible is also critical, because every organization does product differently. They have different perspectives on what product management is. Some are more agile oriented, where the product manager is focused on working with the development team, and they're more tactical in nature, and others are more strategic oriented product managers. So it depends on the organization. So be open to trying different things and experimenting and learning different aspects of product management until you find what you like and enjoy doing.
Yep. Yeah. So separately, on kind of a post-topic question, Emil has a question about: are there any product management conferences that people here would recommend?
Well, if you are in the New York, New Jersey area, there is one put on by Tech United New Jersey. It's called Propellify, that they run. I think it's in October, so it's a ways out at this point. You just missed it. But that's, it's a smaller one, and I think it's mostly outdoors, but that's a nice one. A lot of local companies there. And I see a couple of folks in the chat, shouted out Product Con and Mind the Product. I would also mention potentially Industry, which is put on by Product Collective.
In the Atlanta area, we have Product Camp. I'm not sure if they're national, but they put on.
They're global. They're global. Yep. You also have PLG. There's a PLG summit, a CPO summit. I moderated and I moderated and kind of helped run the CPO summit, run by, I think, the PLG organization. I think. Of course, I might be messing that up, and if I am, I apologize to the CPO summit folks. Product-led Alliance, I think, is the umbrella organization there. There's a lot of those. Meet the Product, or Mind the Product. Sorry, Mind the Product is one I've been to in London, and I enjoyed that one. I think there's a lot of them out there. At the conference level, I think those are the top ones that everything we've kind of mentioned, all the ones off the top of my head. If there's others that people have in mind, drop them in the comments or send them my way. Happy to try to aggregate some of this information to share out with the community. With that said, we're going to go over now. It's time for the answer to the trivia question I posed earlier. And so the trivia question that I had asked at the beginning here, does anyone think they have the answer to this trivia question? As I scan the room, as I scan the chat.
I feel like I might, but it seems too obvious to be correct.
Oh, well then definitely. What is it?
Is it Airbnb?
Well, let's give everyone else a chance to answer first. Mark, Raheel?
No
clue on my side either. Sorry.
No clue. Oh my gosh. I didn't think I picked that. I didn't think it was TripAdvisor, says Tim Shea. Well, let's see. I think that any other answers? I'm looking once. I'm looking twice. What is the question?
What is the question?
The question, I'll restate it one last time, is which company expanded its getaway ethos to the role of product manager? I'll pause. I'll see if there's any other answers. I see no other answers. So I guess we have TripAdvisor and Airbnb are the two answers, and I've stumped two people at the round table, which just means VRBO. I guess we're just in that space now. All right, let's let's go check out the answer then.
Which company expanded its getaway ethos to the role of product manager? Available in over 97% of countries. Founded 1 year before the product group in August of 2008. And initially funded by selling repackaged cereals, Obama O's, and Captain McCain's. The answer is Airbnb. Brian Chesky, co-founder and CEO of Airbnb, famously stated at Figma 23 that over the pandemic, they got rid of the product management function to promote a more cohesive vision for products and become a design-led company. He later clarified that we're going to combine product marketing and product management, adding, you can't develop products unless you know how to talk about products. Ouch to those former PMs. Guess we'll just have to wait and see how this experiment goes. One additional fun bonus fact. The Air in the name of Airbnb stands for airbed, so its name really means airbed and breakfast.
All right. So with that said, let me just say, Laura, you're the winner tonight. You've got you win the prize, which is all of her admiration and respect for knowing that the answer was Airbnb. Are you? I guess you're familiar with the
I remember all the
the
consternation before everyone figured out that like they just kind of retitled it and like retweaked it a little bit, and they weren't actually getting rid of product management. But yeah, I think they took away the title.
Yeah, they took away the title. They moved it into marketing. They said they kind of it was like a shift and rebrand. It was a lot of moving pieces. It was saying that they're going to do what Apple does. Well, I would also add that Apple does have product managers. They then kind of put designers in to do what the product managers were doing. And I will preface everything with the fact that Brian is a designer. So he might just have a little bias showing in that decision. But I think I do say I can understand the sentiment for getting rid of product if he's saying his product managers were not able to talk about their products. So if that was a prevailing theme, and I have to assume it was, if that's what he said, then I could understand being frustrated and wanting to get rid of all your product people. It feels maybe new leadership could have helped that on the product side or restructuring, but I don't know. What do I know? It's definitely gotten a lot of press. Because really, when he originally came out with it, he said to everyone, and they did this over the pandemic, but he said it at a big conference that, yeah, we got rid of product managers, was his kind of his blanket quote there, to which the room full of designers applauded with glee.
See, I feel like if you're doing your job right as a product manager, the designers don't clap for you to not be there. They like you there.
It was also, it was at a conference. Like, you had a room of designers applauding for getting rid of product managers, to which maybe we need to have another, maybe it's a topic for a future roundtable, in that, what are we all doing wrong? And I'll include myself in that. What are we all doing wrong if a giant room of product managers is applauding getting rid of a giant room of designers is applauding getting rid of product managers? There's something going wrong in product management, and maybe at a broader level. But I'll save that for another time, because I think I need to tease that out a little bit myself.
That's a full 2-hour conversation.
Yeah. So I think that's definitely worth exploring, though. So I want to kind of just wrap up, and again, like I said, Laura, congrats on winning. I want to kind of go around the room, see what sort of final comments everyone might have. Raheel, I'll start with you. Any final comments?
I think kind of just circling back on product-led strategies, and they can be difficult to implement. I think we all understand, especially with the day and age we live in with AI and all of these new technologies kind of converging, and there's a lot of convergence going on in technologies and products as well. Having that product-led approach and having that key product role, if you may, is necessary. I think having that quote-unquote grit around that is necessary as well, right? And it has to come from all stakeholders, all leaders, having that understanding of what a product-led strategy is, and really having someone who shepherds that through. So having a thick skin goes a long way, and being curious goes a long way.
Laura?
And being able to learn fast goes a long way too, I think. And I'm seeing some more talk in the chat about, what is a product manager, and it's kind of different everywhere you go. And that's absolutely true. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But at the end of the day, some of it is just figuring out what kind of product manager you want to be, or you are, and fitting into that. But, at the end of the day, I think it's about building the right thing for the right people at the right time in the right way, which is a really broad answer, but that's probably the only answer you can give that applies across the board. Yeah.
And Mark, final comments.
I don't think I have any additional comments to add, but I do want to thank you for inviting me and allowing me to participate in the roundtable. This is my first experience in one of your sessions. And it was great to pontificate a bit, but also to learn from my fellow roundtable participants. So thank you.
Awesome. And with that said, really, this was a great conversation talking about everything from product-led strategies to overcoming the hurdles that many of us face and overcoming them and getting into the field of product management. And I really want to thank the on-camera, the off-camera members of this large global roundtable that we've had here. We had really great comments, really great questions, all around awesome perspectives being shared. And I really want to thank you, because it's your participation. It's everyone speaking up and sharing what they've learned that makes TPG Live what it is. And again, I just want to once again thank our special guests, our on-camera part of the roundtable, Raheel, Laura, and Mark, for really an outstanding session. And with that, just some final closing remarks.
Again, I want to thank all of our off-camera roundtable attendees for their engagement and for submitting thought-provoking questions and comments throughout the discussion. Your participation is what makes these podcasts truly invaluable for the product management community. Whether you're an engineer, a brand new product manager, a designer, a salesperson, a chief anything officer, or merely product management curious, your perspective, questions, insights, and stories enrich our conversations. We invite you to be part of our on-screen roundtable and engage in these lively discussions. Don't hesitate to reach out by emailing me at jhorn, that is JHORN, at theproductguy.com. There are always more topics to cover, so in the comments below, let me know what you'd like to hear discussed in future episodes. To stay up to date on all things product management, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Thanks again to everybody. I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation on our next TPG Live, where diverse perspectives, continuous learning, and expansive innovation are empowering the product mindset one discussion at a time. Now go and amplify your impact.